Doing well. This is the Canadian Foreign Policy Hour, or I should say the Canadian Foreign Policy half an hour. We're cutting down to just 30 minutes because there's going to be a meeting, volunteer meeting for the my NDP leadership campaign starting at 6:30. And thus far, we still only have, I believe, one Zoom room here. So there's lots of developments. I'll get right to it. There's story about the Le Devoir has a story about les énergies fossiles d'ici menaçant le climat mondial. So just about the Canada being the fourth biggest producer of fossil fuels and the impact on the climate. There's a story in the business section of the Financial Post about oil exports push Port of Vancouver to record cargo shipments. And because the Trans Mountain's been expanded, increased oil extraction and exports from Vancouver. Simultaneously, there's a story about, I think someone, maybe I didn't block the unmute. Oh, anyways, there's a story about the Greenland ice cap is losing around 30 million tons of ice an hour, 20% more than what scientists originally thought. So there's just more evidence about the dangers of the climate crisis and Canada's substantial contribution. There was a story I read, it's actually from a few weeks ago, a business section, Globe Mail business section story about a Fortis, which is, it's either Nova Scotia, either Halifax or Newfoundland. I think it's Halifax, company, electricity company. And it's a big operator. I knew it was a significant operator in the Caribbean. But what was interesting about this business section story, which was actually from about 3 weeks ago, but I just read it back section of the Globe business section when I went to Toronto 10 days ago or whatever that was, is that they're basically, the story was saying that Fortis, uh, I guess, began its operations in Turks and Caicos, which had just sold, when there was discussion about Canada taking over the Turks and Caicos. And that's been an issue that's been raised by different parliamentarians over the years of annexing Turks and Caicos. And that goes into, and the story does actually mention this. It touches on the whole history of Canada's effort to take over the British colonies in the Caribbean, late 1870s. And then there was a formal push during at the end of World War One, where the other dominions that fought with the British benefited from German properties. So South Africa with the German colonies in West Africa, and Australia and New Zealand, I believe, got something out in the Pacific. And so Canada formally tried to take over the British colonies. There was a it was, oh, they were like of two minds, but there was an actual push on this matter. So that's just a part of Canadian history, formal colonial kind of history that this Globe business section mentions, with Fortis selling its operation Turks and Caicos. With regards to Haiti, there was Canadian drones. The drones that the Haitian police using killed 8 children in Cité Soleil, the most impoverished neighborhood of Port-au-Prince, last week. And also, Carney met with the head of the Transition Council, and Anita Anand announced $60 million for projects in Haiti. And there's stuff about the Americans pushing Canada again to send troops to Haiti. So it's still kind of on the, uh, I guess, back burner. Canada's providing aid. I mean, the situation in Haiti has become so grim that there's no easy out, there's no good option. But certainly, the Canada providing drones to the police that then kill 8 children in Cité Soleil That is obviously definitely not a good thing. And Canada trained the Haitian police as well that this whole drone, the police engagement in drone warfare, and then former head of Blackwater, Prince. Apparently, he's operating in Haiti. This the situation has got there is a real security situation, and the gangs are a big problem. But the alternative of either state repression or foreign mercenaries is not a particularly good option either. The Journal de Montréal reported that the police, the supposed Chinese police stations, the big kerfuffle about that, I guess 2.5 or so years ago. It was, I believe, a Spanish NGO that claimed all these Chinese police stations and cities all around the world. And here in Montreal, they claim these two different Chinese institutions, Chinese community institutions, Chinese Canadian community institutions were like acting as Chinese police stations, including the one just in Chinatown. I went to a couple press conferences there where they got like they got these accusations and led to like uh, not getting the banks with ending their loans. It was basically totally disastrous. They got, I think it was some municipal contracts that were broken, like for language classes and stuff like that, and it was just disastrous for this the community organization. And then there was nothing there. And now finally the police have admitted 2.5 years later, the investigation's complete, no charges, and sorry, fortunately the organization here in Chinatown sued the police about a year ago. Hopefully they will be compensated. But it's just one more example of this xenophobia whipped up. It just collapses. I mean, there's all these examples with this alleged foreign interference, which even the Canadian officials essentially found to be dubious, and just another example. But there's a lot of damage, right? A lot of people get isolated. Organizations have been targeted. The one out in the suburbs of Montreal, I forget what suburb it was in. It was the she was like not the mayor. I think she was number two on the municipality council, and she got like roasted, attacked, and like alleged that she was also in charge of this community organization, and and uh, and then nothing, like there's no, it's all just there's no Chinese police station, as was pretty obvious to everyone who bothered to like look at this in a dispassionate way, and then the system just moves on. The reportedly, I hadn't seen this, but uh, Staples, in his what's it called, peace, I forget, anyways, he has a Saturday send out, the piece, Stephen Staples, and he quotes Carney apparently said to the European audience last month that Canada would quadruple its military spending by 2030, quadruple. And then there's Canada's defense minister was down at the U.S. Meeting with I think Hesick or Hesketh or however you pronounce the Secretary of Defense, and the U.S. readout, or the U.S. Embassy's readout of it, says that Canada was going to increase defense spending to 5% of gross domestic product, and planned investments to deliver on the promise by 2035. So the Americans are boasting that Canada is going to hit this 5%. Carney's saying we're going to quadruple, and it's spilling everywhere. So Le Devoir had a story this week about uh, how the Quebec government has cited uh, the arms industry as the third uh, economic area to stimulate. So now they're getting open about it. That like we're cutting edge arms industry here in Quebec, and their third priority of economic sector, according to this Le Devoir article. The Le Devoir article also claims that the number of Quebec companies interested in defense, quote unquote defense, had it rose from 470 to 1,200. So I guess there's all kinds of companies that have sort of produce sort of dual use type stuff, and they're seeing all these contracts appearing, and so they are obviously trying to make money, and they this number seems a little odd to me, but this is what Le Wall is reporting, that the number of firms that have some military tie increased from 470 to 1,200 over the past year. The broad pattern is clear. Whether these specific numbers are correct, I don't know, but the broad pattern is clear. Huge increase, all kinds of areas of government, life, banks, private sector, da 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 da, more and more and more and more into the arms sector. There was a story. I'm not sure if this was Puglisi, where this was, but about the Canadian military lining up to get the HIMARS. And even though there's a South Korean, I believe, firm that has produces something similar, Carney, of course, said, we're supposed to be buying less from the U.S. And this can work out up to 5 billion with all the different elements to it. And apparently, the Army is pushing hard for the U.S. rocket system. Also, the Puglisi in the Ottawa Citizen reports on the review of Canada's F-35 is supposedly done on September 22nd. So that's about a week ago. A lot of this today's stuff is over the last 2 weeks. And in it, this Puglisi article, he points out that the Americans are warning Canada about negative consequences if the F-35 purchase doesn't go through. Simultaneously, I think it's Voice of Women for Peace that did this report about the F-35, and they're arguing. They call it genocide jet builders, and they're talking about Stelia, for a supplier, F-35 supplier here in Canada, and they talk about basically how the F-35 has been enabled the genocide in Gaza, and they have this beast mode. This Lockheed Martin's brand is the beast mode, where it's maximum bombing capacity, only used by Israel's customized F-35 Aldir, I guess they call it, where it can quadruple the maximum amount of bombs a single jet can drop on Gaza's defenseless population to 27 U.S. tons. And then they're using the Gaza horrors as a laboratory and a selling point for the jet. Look how many people we can kill in one go, and all this kind of madness. Uh, and they go into I didn't read the full report. I just read the summary, uh, and they go into different suppliers, Stelia Aerospace supplier, and the like. On the Holocaust in Gaza, Bob Ray, Canada's ambassador, listened to Netanyahu as he boasted about committing genocide. You have Scott Moe, the premier of Saskatchewan, meeting with Israel's ambassador a couple days ago. You have Thomas Mulcair meeting with the Israeli consul here in Montreal. It's just a total embarrassment. 2 years in, this open identification. There's a couple stories this week that one in one in Le Devoir and one in the Globe, where it's just so embarrassing. Thomas Juneau, who's this former D&D, but he frames himself as kind of like a thinking foreign policy, whatever expert, this and that. Uh, he has a piece in the Globe where he talks about the poll quote is Canada's recognition of Palestine is aligned with its traditional support for security and dignity for both peoples. I mean, really, like who could be like even a little bit serious and claim that Canada has worked for dignity and security for both people? I mean, have you seen any of what's coming out of Gaza? Have you seen any of the horrors? You think this is like working for dignity of both? I mean, you just shake your head at these people like, Oh, this is the liberalish establishment. Anyways, and then in Le Devoir, from a better perspective, somebody who was actually trying to defend or Palestinians being slaughtered, it had a Le Devoir column, Gaza, baromètre de notre humanité. So Gaza, the barometer of our humanity. And in it, she has a sentence, a couple, it's a whole paragraph, but I just quote one sentence. Mu par un génie géopolitique unique, Lester Pearson was able to imagine a role, a singular, a special role for our country, uh, that of artisan of peace, not a power, with not a power, but with moral authority. And like this has nothing to do with Lester Pearson's history. And that would be like, odious just across the board, but it really has nothing to do with Lester Pearson on Palestine. The notion that someone could write glowingly about Lester Pearson in a piece defending Palestinians. Lester Pearson was the lead architect of the partition plan. He was openly hostile, indifferent to Palestinian concerns. And it just speaks to how propagandized we are. That even someone standing up for Palestinians in Le Devoir would go out of their way with this like laudatory stuff about Lester Pearson. It just makes no sense. You have to be so ignorant to add it. And then the question becomes why? Why would you bother just lying about Lester Pearson? I mean, I get the notion of trying to like play off of, okay, Canada has been a historic, peacekeeper, good guy, and so we have to be, good today. I'm okay with a little bit of that mythologizing. If you're going to get something in the corporate media and you feel like you have to put a little bit of that myth in there to get into the corporate media, I'm okay with that. But you can't get into like specifics. You can't be like Lester Pearson was a great humanitarian, but Lester Pearson like clearly, unambiguously screwed over Palestinians in 47 and then onwards. So anyways, but it's the depth of the propaganda and the mythology is pretty extreme. There's a piece that guy from the Toronto is a Grind magazine, I believe it's called. I'm forgetting, I'm blanking his name right now. He posted this thing about CSIS in this 2014 article where CSIS agents would tell sources that if they didn't they better cooperate. This is people in Canada. They better cooperate, or CSIS couldn't protect them from Mossad or from the CIA. Sort of hinting at people, like basically intimidating people that like if you don't cooperate with us, the Mossad or CIA might knock you off. Implying in Canada, maybe not necessarily just in Canada, maybe somewhere else, but kind of implying that. And it's kind of an interesting revelation. Uh, there's a story about the Canadian is Palestinians getting into Canada or trying to get into Canada, and how the Israelis still vet who gets to get out of Gaza, and it's of course this impossible situation, right? There's almost no Palestinians who've been able to get into Canada amidst the horrors. And Justin McLennan, she posts, imagine asking Hitler which Jews were, quote, safe enough to accept as refugees. Right? That's essentially what's happening. You have to get the okay of the Holocaust promoting Israeli government, Canada, to see if Palestinians can get into Canada. On the Zionist authoritarian front, there's a bunch of developments. A prof at McGill was dropped from his role in the student discipline committee because he said that there should be support for the resistance, Hamas and Hezbollah, the resistance to Israel. They were the main forces that could resist Israel's Holocaust, and therefore they should be supported. And he got turfed after a big Zionist lobby. He didn't get fired from university, but he lost his position on the student tribunal. There's a story about the at Vancouver Island University in Nanaimo, the students who are being suspended for their involvement in the student encampment. There's the Montreal Gazette had a story about there's efforts to bar more protests at McGill, and the McGill's trying to get these like really serious restrictions on protests. And there's a pushback from the unions because, of course, there will be it's focused on the Palestine anti-genocide, but it will be much much broader than that. Um, there's a story about kneecap. That's a fascinating one. So that Vince Gasparo or something like that, this new MP, a week ago, 10 days ago, he puts out this video saying kneecap's been blocked from coming to Canada. Apparently, he went rogue. He didn't actually have the okay of the immigration minister, and they uh, now it seems like it's sort of collapsing a little bit. It's a bit unclear. But basically, yeah. Anyways, he sort of went rogue and made a claim. And I think what's happened here is the Zionist groups trying to kind of prodded him into doing this, and as a way to try to create a fait accompli. We'll see if it gets unraveled. There does seem to be a bit of a picking up attention to the story. So the government's in a tough spot here because the Zionist lobby will go bananas if they allow kneecap in. And this rookie MP has has probably broken the law. Uh, what else? Oh, and on terms of so there's a terrorism list. The the terrorism legislation. So the government has announced legislation as of 10 days ago or something like that to that if you fly a symbol of a listed terrorist organization, you will uh, in front of a community center or religious institution where Benjamin Netanyahu or an Israeli general is speaking, you would lose or you could find yourself put in jail for 10 years. So they didn't go quite as far as what we have with Palestine Action, but it's basically restricted. So if I was to have the Sami Doon Palestinian Political Prisoners Network symbol or flag, and I waved it in front of this an event where Netanyahu was speaking, uh, it could be defined as trying to engender hate, and you could find yourself in jail for 10 days. So that's a pretty odious stepping up of the suppression. Quick thing on my two events. The first so it seems so long ago because I ended up doing t 11 cities or wherever, and I traveled every day, quick from place to place. But my launch in Toronto, and then the next night at Waterloo, Wilfrid Laurier University, they got them shut down. Both events ended up being for the better. They were quite the Toronto event on the steps of St. Paul's Church, the Anglican Church in Bloor Street in Toronto, was wonderful. It was really quite an exhilarating event. I very much enjoyed it. It was probably one of the most unique talks I've ever given. And then they got the Wilfrid Laurier University the next night with Prof. Peter Eglin, who's a retired prof there. They were able to get that shut down. And again, we took the space right in front of the classroom. And it was about 50 people. It was a good turnout. And we took the public. So it ended up being a better event because of the shutdown. So it worked to our favor. But nonetheless, the idea that the Zionist groups can still get events shut down 2 years into the horrors is quite remarkable. Now, the final thing I want to talk about is I came across somebody, and I know like Yuri and others have used that term, derangement syndrome. I've seen people, refer to the Trump derangement syndrome and other different individuals. I won't get into all the names. Refer to it becomes a derangement syndrome. I saw somebody post that about me, and that there's these people who've just like kind of lost it when it comes to me, and I agree with that. And there's some people is like posting that's just like totally bananas. It's these people like just embarrass themselves. It's just totally bananas. They've just I guess there's been so much demonization. There's there's just this appetite. People, and this is people who are like in the left kind of world. And the first one I just want to mention quickly is Matthew Behrens, this peace activist who I've talked about him in the past a few months ago, but he did this again. I wrote about the kneecap story 2 days ago. I posted it, and he's basically claiming this article I wrote about kneecap is anti-Semitic, and he's claiming it's anti-Semitic because I mentioned that this Vince Gasparo is he represents the riding with the third biggest Jewish population in the country. And it's like these people have got themselves so far down the path of policing language, of focusing on uh, I guess their own sensitivities, that they think it's illegitimate to mention that Vince Gasparo and his predecessor in that riding, Marco Mendocino, that the fact that there's a large Jewish community that impacts their position. I mean, you just have to like look at a map of the ridings that are the most Jewish ridings in the country, and you got like Anthony Housefather, totally fanatic, liberal, whatever. You got Melissa Lanceman, you got Marco Mendocino, and now Vince Gasparo. You got Anna Gainey here in Montreal. I mean, the pattern is clear cut. In these people's own heads, they frame it that way. They say, I'm doing this on behalf of the Jewish community that I'm representing in my riding. There's nothing in pointing that obvious reality out. That is not saying that all Jewish people support Netanyahu's crimes or Israel's crimes or anything like that. But it's an obvious fact. And these people are so focused on their own sensitivities, or they've just gone into the Eve derangement syndrome where they just is like anything that I write, it's just like I don't know, they project whatever they want to project onto it. I'm not exactly sure what's going on. But it's just remarkable to see on the Palestine thing 2 years into a live stream Holocaust, the ethnic cleansing of all non-Jews in Gaza, the elimination or cleansing of all non-Jews in Gaza, and they still have the audacity to be so sensitive about these things. Now, another example is this guy, this former CBC reporter, a past like year and a half, 2 years. I might have mentioned this in the past. Every article I write on Rabble or Canadian Dimension, he writes this attack, and is David Gutnick, I believe is his name. And so I have a piece on Rabble a week ago about anti-capitalism and the NDP campaign, and this guy posts at the bottom of it. He says Eve Engler is not anti-capitalist nor anti-war. He fully supports Russian capitalism and one consequence: Putin's war on Ukrainian civilians. Engler's strange insistence that he always be referred to as Canada's Chomsky and I.F. Stone rolled into one is but one indication in a long list that he is in no way the person to lead the NDP. One wonders why the editor of Rabble published such puffed up nonsense. I have never said anything good about Russian capitalism. I've never said anything about Vladimir Putin, and I have certainly never demanded that whenever I'm identified that I identify what is that referred to as Kenneth Chomsky or I have Stone rolled into one. I don't know where in the world this guy's getting it. Yes, I have a bio. There's a bio that does cite other people making that statement. It's a bio. People ask me for a bio. I send a bio. That's the bio. It might appear at the bottom of Ravel. I don't know. That's it. It's the bio. I mean, what do you do? But the guy's like clearly completely deranged. Literally everything, single thing I post, he puts some like attack about like I support Russian capitalism. Like I've never written a thing about Russian capitalism. It's just totally weird. And but this is like he worked for CBC for like 30 years or something like that. So he's apparently somewhat of a serious person or something. It's pretty remarkable to see. And then there's this other one on Rabble. There's a story on this Rabble story about conspiracies. And this person, I don't know who this is, looks anonymous. It says, a year ago, Eve Engler disgraced this platform by saying that in the event of an American invasion, the majority of those serving in the Canadian Armed Forces would betray their country and become traitors. I don't know what they're referring to exactly. What I presume is that joke I've made multiple times about if the US invaded Canada, there would be Canadian soldiers that would assist because the Canadian soldiers assist the US wherever it invades. It's probably something to do with that or an article I wrote that's going in that direction. But this person has like morphed it into I'm saying all of Canadian soldiers are traitors and I mean it's just and betray their country. It's just like I don't you don't know like what is this? Is this some of this is just like Israel lobby plants? Is it just that I think at the big picture level, it's that like I've challenged Canadian imperialism is so fundamental. We live in such an imperialistic country that the whole ethos is completely like Canada's good guy, we're on the whatever this, and so like by challenging this myth, you basically confronted the whole liberal and left, much of left establishment, and so it's just like yeah, it's just they people panic and they freak out, and it's like Eve is a supporter of Russian capitalism. I read a story about anti-capitalist story, and the framing is Eve supports Russian capitalism. I don't know like where somebody would get this from, but they have the audacity to put this out there publicly. They're identifying themselves with this nonsense, and they don't seem to be embarrassed by it. Anyways, we're 30 minutes in. Sorry, gonna have to cut it there. Same time, same place next week. Take care, everyone. So,